Hey, creative souls, writers, word witches, thank you for tuning in. I'm so happy that you're here. In this video, I will be talking about how the full moon in Leo and a couple of other aspects can influence and benefit your writing practice. I've consulted Kelly at Kelly's Astrology for her interpretations, and I will put links to her channel and to her full moon in Leo video in the description, so you can check those out further if you like. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Johnny Mazzocco. I am a retired adjunct writing professor, and I call myself a word witch. And I do that because I am a practicing witch, and I have been helping people work magic on the page for well over 2 decades. I'm on this earth to heal the world through stories, whether it's the ones I write and tell or the ones that I help you write and tell. Thank you so much for your likes, shares, and subscribes, because every single one of you is helping me grow this community of like-minded creatives who embrace the power of story to heal. Now on to the full moon in Leo. First, a few notes about positioning. Uranus will be squaring the full moon at 23 degrees in Taurus. The full moon is 24 degrees Leo, and Mercury is at 26 degrees Aquarius, right next to the sun. That means that the sun and the moon are opposite each other, with Taurus and Mercury, within only a couple degrees of each other. So let's talk about what all that means, especially in terms of its influence on your writing practice. First, the full moon in Leo. Leo's a fire sign, so it means action and movement and maybe drama, and maybe some revelations. Leo highlights leaders and people in positions of power. Oh, lovely. Can't wait to see what's next around all of that. On a personal level, Kelly says you might be super motivated to take action on something or to feel angry or fired up over something you're passionate about, something you care about very much. In terms of your writing, be sure to make conscious decisions about how you will apply this kind of energy to your practice. Will you commit even more to your writing life? Will you overcome a stuck point and blaze through your novel or short story or whatever it is you're working on? Or maybe a particular section that's been confusing and perplexing. This is great energy to channel into any kind of creative project. So I hope you'll be able to really embrace it and use it to your benefit. As Kelly points out, moving our bodies is really important with this kind of energy. So if you don't already, maybe now is the time to build that element of walking into your life and your writing practice that you've probably heard me talk about. Not only will it help you expel or move this energy through you, walking is also a great way for your mind to work out creative problems, come up with solutions, and spark new ideas. So make a plan. How will you use it? Get ready. Be prepared for it. Otherwise, you may find yourself feeling fragmented and pissed off. So it's about being intentional and understanding what's coming and preparing for it. Another important and potent aspect that's happening, as I mentioned earlier, is Uranus. Uranus is considered the wild card planet. It's about freedom and liberation and change. And don't be surprised by sudden or shocking changes to the usual. And that's almost funny right now, right? But not really, considering the state of the world right now. And right here in the good old US. So of course that's going to happen here. That's what's been happening, right? And it will continue. So be intentional, be prepared, and figure out how to really channel your strong feelings about things. Don't let them eat you up inside. Walk them out, funnel them through you, channel them through you into your writing in some way. The sudden shock or change could also happen in your life. It might mean a sudden change in your work life or your job situation that suddenly allows you more time to write. It might mean that an opening of some kind comes along so that you can write, or that you suddenly have the house to yourself a big chunk of the day if you live with other people, and if that has not been the case. And of course, it could go the other way, and you could find that more of your time is being taken up by obligations not related to your writing. And this could drop that fiery anger or frustration that I mentioned earlier. If you watched my Alchemy of Writing webinar, if you've purchased or have access to my Alchemy of Writing course, because you're a member of the Alchemy of Writing membership group, you know that one of the things I talk about is planning. Planning how to deal with obstacles before they happen. And by that, I mean imagining obstacles that could come up, whether they're inner obstacles or outer obstacles, so that you can preemptively create a plan to counteract them when they arise so that your practice doesn't get completely derailed. And I will say this, if you are a person with a neurodivergent brain and you get derailed, it is doubly, triply difficult to get back on track. I'm sure you've experienced that. And so this is why having plans in place so that our brains don't have to remember, oh, what am I going to do when this happens? We just check the resource that we've created and say, oh, when this happens, this is my backup plan. This is my backup plan A, backup plan B. And then just do it. Don't question it, just do it. Start thinking about how you will maintain your writing practice in the event that someone else tries to claim your time. Other people are the biggest obstacles, I think, to a person's writing practice. So if someone tries to claim your time or throws you a curveball to disrupt the consistency that you've created, have a plan in place already. As I always recommend, take a look at your birth chart and see where Uranus sits. Check out which house it's in, take a look at the sign that it's in, etc. And just before making this video, I looked mine up to see, because I had no awareness. I know a lot about my chart, but I didn't know about Uranus. And oh my, I won't go into great detail, but Uranus is all over my chart, which does not surprise me. I was really somewhat shocked. But the short version is that Uranus is in Leo in my 10th house. And the 10th house is about career, reputation, and legacy, right along with Mercury, because I have Mercury in Cancer in my midheaven. So the 10th house is the midheaven. So this energy could definitely have something to do with my writing life. So that's pretty exciting. So these energies we talk about during a full moon don't just apply to us on an individual level, right? It's about the collective as well. So we might see this kind of disruptive, forceful energy play out on a larger scale. Might. Probably, for sure. I think there's no question that we're going to see that around this full moon and beyond. And I want to do a slight digression here. I didn't watch the Super Bowl. I couldn't give a shit about football. But I did, after the fact, look up the halftime show. And I want to say that Kendrick Lamar and that whole amazing spectacle that he put on, that is someone using their fiery, creative energy to express their voice to try and make a difference. That's what we need to be doing as creatives. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It is phenomenal. And it was like a big F-U to you-know-who. So the unfortunate thing about this kind of energy, like we can harness it for the good, but not everybody does that. And so it's worth mentioning that when this kind of energy is around us, is influencing us, and it plays out on a larger scale, it oftentimes impacts politics. And then it has this trickle-down effect to us as individuals in our individual lives. And I know a lot of people say, oh, I'm not into politics. I don't get into that. Well, folks, now we don't have a choice. And I might make another video about how this bullshit with tearing down data and annihilating databases, removing them, getting into people's information. I will share in a future video how that's directly impacted me already in my life and people that I love. And it fucking sucks. And it's just the beginning. There's a term that came about from the feminist movement in the 60s. As far as I can tell, it's from an essay that activist Carol Hanisch published in 1969 that says the personal is political. It cannot help but be. Us having the freedom to use our voices, that is a political act that too many people have taken for granted. And let's hope we don't lose that. So for you, for yourself, and for your life, how does this national and global disruptive energy, a dismantling really, a coup, it is a fucking coup, how is this going to impact your life? And stick your head in the sand and it will bite you in the ass. So again, like I said, planning for your writing practice, planning for this is a really good idea right now. I will say in the short term, one really powerful thing you can do is not let it disrupt your writing practice. And I know for some people that may seem like a silly thing because we are not taught to value writing and storytelling as a valuable, essential practice for human beings. But your words are your voice, and it's always, always a good idea to use your voice. And now more than ever, because your words have power. And I don't care what you're writing. You don't have to be writing the political stuff. You can be telling nice stories about nice people who go through hard things and make it out the other end. That is power. That creates change. And it connects people to other people. And that is what we need. Kelly talks about the myth that aligns best with this energy, with Uranian energy. And she says that it's the myth of Prometheus. So Prometheus was a Greek god. He was a god of fire. He was known for taking fire from the Olympian gods because they were hoarding it all for themselves. Sound familiar? And Prometheus, after he took the fire from the gods who were hoarding it, he gave it to humanity so they could use it wisely for technology, for civilization, for knowledge. But he paid a price for that. Zeus condemned him to an eternal torment that I'm not even going to say here. If you really want to know it, you can Google it, look it up. And I don't think the takeaway from this is that Prometheus ended up in eternal torment. I don't think that's the message. The message, the takeaway from that myth, is that he sacrificed for the good of all. And I think that can mean a whole lot of things to all of us. And it doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your physical life, but it's time that we start to think about what can we sacrifice for the greater good, and how that influences and impacts our writing practices, and how we can use our writing practices to do those kinds of things. So this myth really is about the weight of human striving, and I think all of us can relate to that. This trying to just make it through life. Because there are good things about life, yes, and there are also some really hard things. And it's time now to do away with this toxic positivity that has been floating around for way too long, and get real about all sorts of things and how we're going to deal with them, not be blind to them. And we can all probably think of other stories throughout history, whether they're fictional, fables, myths, or real life stories. For example, Robin Hood robbing from the rich to give to the poor. He created a crime, he robbed, but he did it for a good reason. And stories like this really ask us to check where our morality lies. Where do we make exceptions? And it really asks us to question these narratives that we live by, that have just become second nature, like the air we breathe, that we accept tacitly. There was also Moses, who took the Israelites out of Egyptian slavery. There was Jesus, who sacrificed himself. And I've heard of some Japanese folklore, and I don't remember the name of it. I wish I had looked it up before I started this, but I didn't. And it's about the same theme, going against the status quo for the greater good. And there are many, many, many others. And of course, a recent real-life event of a person breaking a law that most of us would consider a horrible act, and he did it because he had had it up to here with the powers that be, and the way they impact in very dramatic and drastic, life-changing, life-ending ways the common everyday person. These are all storylines of aware, exhausted, and I think empathetic people who fight for justice for the good of all. So how does all this apply to your writing life, aside from being stories that can inform our own lives? Well, first, think about what you're fired up about. Think about someone or something that has taken your fire, your desire to write, or someone who's tried to quiet your voice. And I talk about this often, whether you're writing about taboo subjects and just having this feeling that, oh, this is not going to go over well with my friends, my family, whatever. Or resisting it entirely because you know from the way they responded to other things you've written that there's going to be a backlash. And you don't want to deal with that. And I understand, because writers are sensitive people. The world feels shocking to us some days, especially those of us who are writers and HSPs and empaths and neurodivergents. Life is shocking on a daily basis for us. When people act out towards you, and I don't care who they are, about what you've written, and especially if you're writing fiction and you're not writing directly about them, but people will see themselves in our work, whether they are really there or not. When they react and let their stress, frustration come out at you, that is them trying to silence you, even if they're doing it inadvertently. So who has done that to you? Who do you fear for writing what you want to write about? This energy is about how you can get all of that back, that impulse to write, to tell stories, to uncover universal truths about the human condition that are yours and yours alone. No one else gets to lay claim on them, or try to subvert them, or try to silence them. And I've been thinking along these lines a lot lately. When the world is seemingly going to shit, when our information is being accessed by any Joe Blow who wants to do it, as long as he has enough money, when research and factual information are being scrubbed from databases, when any sense of personal agency that we might have is feeling threatened, is being threatened, what can we do? And what do we have? We always have our own thoughts, our own words, and our own voices. So with this Prometheus myth in mind, and considering this fiery full moon, where is the fire in your life, and in particular in your writing life? Do you possess the fire you need to finish your novel, or your short story collection, or whatever it is you're working on? And if not, how do you get it back, or maybe have it for the first time? I think it truly does take a kind of fire to be a writer. And sometimes that fire is a blaze, sometimes it's a peaceful flicker, and sometimes it's a smoldering spark. If you're called to be a writer, you always have a fire of some kind inside you. Reading from a book by Richard Tarnas. If you don't know Richard Tarnas, he is a big, well-known name in the astrology world. Kelly says that the fire of Prometheus symbolizes a few things. So the creative spark, so as I said, that's us, lovely writers. That's what we have to offer the world. Cultural and or technological breakthroughs, an enhancement of human autonomy, a liberating gift from above, sudden enlightenment. So I mentioned that earlier, this sudden shift or awareness maybe. Intellectual and spiritual awakening. So think lightning bolts, big aha moments. So embrace your inner Prometheus. Think about how Prometheus took from those who had too much, who were hoarding, so he could share it with everyone for the good of all. To personalize this, think about your creative ideas, the stories that you've yet to share, or maybe that you've written and you're trying to get them out into the world. Think about standard narratives accepted by the status quo and how you can reclaim your own narrative or create it for the first time. Think about those narratives that attempt to dictate who you are and who you can be and not be. Because of your gender, because of your socioeconomic level, because of your skin color, because of your sexual orientation, because of your physical ability or mental ability. Think about all these narratives and how they pigeonhole people. And when you write, really think about the words you use and think about how you represent people who are not like you. And as I mentioned, I recently talked about how I've decided to independently publish my novel, Miranda's Garden. You might decide to do something along those lines during this time. Maybe you'll decide to have more agency in your writing life. Maybe you'll find inventive ways to get your work out into the world so people can start reading it, so you don't have to rely on some other human being who says, nah, we're not going to print that. It's not up to them. It's time to not be at the mercy of those in power. And for us, those are the big 5 publishing houses, their magazines and journals, who sometimes have very narrow guidelines about what they will accept, although they don't make it clear to us. It's time to take the reins, get our agency back. Maybe you'll create your own website if you don't have one. Maybe you'll start posting your work on there so people can read it. Maybe you'll offer it for free or you'll start charging a fee for it. You can do whatever you want. Maybe you'll start posting your work on a platform like Medium or Substack. Maybe you'll start a blog or get back to the one that you've had and let sit for a while. Maybe you'll find a way to monetize your work all on your own so that you're the one in charge. So you're not giving your soul away, right? We don't need to do that. It's okay to monetize what we create. We live in a capitalist society and we have to figure out a way as creatives to be able to function in it so we don't starve the fuck to death. Maybe you'll be the one to disseminate your words. So be open to sudden sparks of insight about how you will be the one to manage and distribute your work. And you might be surprised. You might find that a sudden insight, a sudden spark of an idea, or a reframing of a long-held belief will just obliterate in an instant, will just cancel out an obstacle that has been stopping your progress in some way. This Uranian energy can go a long way in helping us overcome fear and really allow us to operate from a place of organic authenticity from within. It's a great motivator. As Kelly says, Uranus is about a whole new kind of future. So think of it in this way, as it applies to your writing. It makes room for new ways of being and doing, new structures, new innovations, new pathways, new agreements. It also encourages, and this aligns with what I was saying earlier, to challenge the status quo. So not letting the powers that be, in this case the publishing world, decide for us, hopefully just the publishing world. Hopefully we don't go clear down this dark rabbit hole that we find ourselves in right now and wind up living in a country that doesn't allow our words to get out in the world. And until then, we need to do what we can to own our voices, to use them, and to get them out into the world before someone tries to snatch them from us. So as I said, in the case of writing, it could be anyone in the publishing world. It could be anyone who thinks they can tell you how to write or what to do with your work. Unless, of course, you've hired an expert. And even then, remember, it's your work. You ultimately get to decide. So it's about not letting the status quo, the way it's always been done, dictate what to do with your writing life, and getting your words out into the world. And keep this in mind. Moments like this, times like this can be very stimulating and exciting. They can also be very destabilizing and uncomfortable. And the unknown is often what keeps people from writing that novel they've been carrying around inside them, because they think they need to know the entire story before they begin, and that's not how it works. Launching off into a new, never-before-done direction creates so many questions, and it asks us to move forward without a firm foundation. because we're doing something either we've never done before or we're doing something no one's ever done before. For example, back to my decision to publish independently. Right now I'm looking at all the steps in the process to get my novel out into the world. And then I will decide very intentionally, based on my budget and other things, what to hire out and what to do myself. Someone told me the other day that a writer can't edit her own work. Keep in mind that this person was an editor, so there's that. And now's the time to really challenge those entrenched beliefs that we have about everything. And in the context of writing, it's time to challenge beliefs around what a writing life or writing practice looks like for you, how long your novel should be. Oh, it can only be 100,000 words. Nope, I get to let it be more if that's what it needs. What stories are okay to tell? Shame be damned. Tell the stories, talk about taboo subjects. Those are the ones that make a difference in the world. Those are the ones that hit readers in that spot, that resonates with them and makes them feel not alone. Whether you need a developmental edit, a line edit, or a proofread, or all of them, and which of those you can do yourself. And honestly, I don't recommend that most writers do all three of those themselves. I think having other sets of eyes on our work at various times is essential. So I'm not saying get completely cocky and think, I don't need anybody to do this, because we want our work to be good. And so get really honest with yourself about what do you need for your project that you're ready to put out into the world. This could be about where you make your novel available. It could be about how you get it out into the world, how you distribute it. It could be how you market it. It could be about whether you allow yourself to call yourself a writer, and maybe reframing what being a writer looks like, and on and on and on, right? And I'll say this, just because you aren't published, just because you've been writing for yourself for years, just because others might not see you as a writer, does not mean you are not one. You get to decide that. Only you. All of the rules that we live by in the world were created by other humans. Just remember that and start asking yourself, who says? If you have some kind of belief that holds you back or that tells you, no, you can't do this or you shouldn't do that, ask yourself, who said that? Because you learned it from somewhere. You get to create new ones for yourself, new rules about how you're going to write, how it's going to fit into your life, how you want to use your words. And again, take a look and see where Leo is in your chart to see what area will be most impacted by this full moon. So remember, I said Uranus is in Leo in my 10th house, or my midheaven, which is also where Mercury is. Mercury in Cancer in my midheaven. And Mercury is all about thoughts and words and writing. And Uranus is squaring this full moon in Leo. And I have Uranus in Leo, so pretty exciting. I can't wait to see what it means. Kelly also recommends that in addition to looking where Uranus and Leo are in your chart, look to see which fixed signs are at 23 and 24 degrees. So fixed signs are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, because these placements will also be impacted by this energy. Let me know in the comments, even if it's just about your Uranus placement. I'd really love to know. This fascinates me. So depending on where this lands for you, if it isn't directly related to your writing life, it could mean that your writing focus will be on certain topics around that particular house where Uranus lands. So side note, if you don't know astrology, and I don't claim to be an expert, I know certain things and I'm fascinated by it and it informs my life. But if you don't know astrology, it is said that each house on the wheel, so 12 different, so it is said that each house on the wheel, there are 12 of them, govern a particular part of our lives. So when a planet lands in a particular house, that planet's energy impacts the topic of that house. So like I said, 10th house is about legacy, career, public life, and that's where I have Mercury and Uranus in Leo. So for me, it's all about that, my legacy around writing and words and thoughts. So for me, it could mean a sudden change in my writing life, and that would be cool. I would accept that, as long as it's a good change. So check out your chart and see, and then let me know. 2 other points worth mentioning related to the full moon. Leo, where the moon is happening, is ruled by the sun, and currently the sun is in Aquarius. Okay, this is where it starts to get like a little tangled knot in my brain, which is what's called the sun's detriment. So the sun is not happy in Aquarius. So this full moon is ruled by a planet that's in detriment. Detriment in astrology occurs when a planet is in a sign opposite its home sign. And this means that when a planet is in detriment, it has a difficulty expressing itself to its fullest. So this can add a quality of inconsistency or a feeling of a lack of stability. which really doubles down on what I talked about earlier, with going against the status quo and striking out on your own to create something brand new in a whole new way. And I want to clarify here, I am not suggesting that any of us go out and wreak havoc and do things that are going to harm other people or get ourselves in so much trouble that we can't do good in the world. I'm not saying that. I'm saying start to think about the narratives you live by and get really intentional about how you want to rewrite them, especially as it impacts your writing practice, because that's why I'm here for you. So all this calls for a lot of scrappiness and innovation, which is Aquarius, but Aquarius is in detriment. And this means you're doing this all on your own. It's like being out in a little canoe in the middle of the ocean and figuring it out. So it means you're going to need to open up your mind and your heart and allow yourself plenty of brainstorming time, even if only with yourself, even if you don't have anyone to talk it through with. And it's not always a good idea to talk things through with other people. So really rely on your own brilliant, beautiful brain to find solutions, to make the thing that you want to happen with your novel and with your work in general. Be willing to try different things or to take a few detours if you have to do that to accomplish what it is that you're after. So many of these qualities that this detriment calls for are already embodied in Uranus, the disruptor, the creator of new ways of being. So as Kelly says, there's a repetition of theme around this full moon. And this means that all this disruption, all this necessary innovation, and I'm not talking about the other stuff, I'm talking about what we can do for ourselves in terms of our writing, okay? All this going against the grain gets fortified, which is in a lot of ways really great, right? Because it's that much more potent. And in other ways, it could mean that it feels even that much more destabilizing and disconcerting and intense. Just remember that we humans are highly, highly capable of redirecting, reinventing, and reconceiving how to make things work for us, whether in life in general or specific to writing when circumstances aren't ideal. The old adage says, necessity is the mother of invention. So use that to your benefit right now. Be willing to throw out the way you've always done things. Be willing to throw out the ways other people have told you you should do things. Don't use the word should, ever. Bottom line, be open to flux and change. Be like water. Let yourself shift and change, go around, over, under, any obstacle that might come your way. And be okay with letting go of something sooner than later when it looks like it isn't going to work. And move on to the next idea, the next new way to do this thing that you're wanting to do. And remember, everyone around you is managing this too. So this might feel a little bit like a merry-go-round on a bumper car on a roller coaster. And it'll be exciting if nothing else. Everything is up in the air, which is very cool because it allows for a lot of possibility. So allow yourself to express yourself in ways you might not typically do it. This can be especially true in your writing. So maybe you do express yourself in your writing often. Maybe you want to try expressing yourself in painting or drawing, and maybe you will create work that will somehow fit together. Think like a book with a poem and a drawing, that kind of thing. Maybe you'll want to start singing if it's something you've always wanted to do. Maybe try writing about a topic you've never ventured into before. Maybe try writing in a genre that you've never written in before. Or in a particular project, maybe try experimenting, using different points of view and tenses, and see how that affects and impacts the story. Lastly, and I promise lastly, Mercury. It's tucked right beside the sun. And I learned a new word in the astrological sense. Kelly says that when this happens, when a planet is snuggled up right next to the sun, it's called being combust. So that means it's hidden by the brightness of the sun's beams because it's so close to it. So the sun can sort of outshine it in some ways because it's so bright we can't see the other planet. And it makes it kind of imperceptible to us. It can also mean that when a planet like Mercury is combust, it can highlight things like secrets and mysteries or anything that's obscured to us right now. And I know we can think about this in the world, but think about it in terms of your writing. We all have things that are obscured to us when we are writing and just living our lives. And so one of the jobs of us as writers is to find those obscured places in our subconscious that can inform our creative process and our stories. And Kelly also says this can look like a clue that divine wisdom might have insights for us. Because Mercury is a planet, right, of communication, ideas, thoughts, pulling in divine energy from the sun. So this can bring us even more revelations and insights than what I've already talked about. So it's a really, really cool full moon. I want to mention this as well because Kelly talks about this, that this Mercury being combust because of its aspect or its closeness to the sun could mean that you're working on something private and something you might want to keep to yourself right now. And I think that's a good advice anytime, honestly. Be very judicious about where you share your ideas, who you share them with, and when. If you have an idea, be sure to save it, keep it sacred, write about it. Don't talk it to death. I've known people who have talked about an idea so much that they didn't need to write about it anymore. And also, if you have an idea and it's just in the idea stage, write a synopsis or a short treatment and then register it with the WGA, the Writers Guild of America. This protects it legally for 5 years. And then you can renew it after 5 years. And it's so inexpensive. It's only $20 or $25, I think. So it's a great way to protect your ideas before they've really formulated. And even after you've created something, say you have a screenplay and you want to start pitching it, register it. This placement of Mercury near the sun also means there's a kind of hidden undertone to all of this I've been talking about, and especially this Mercury energy that could be obscured and maybe not evident until Mercury moves out of the sun's beams at the end of the month. So we may have to wait and see what gets revealed from all of these aspects in a couple of weeks. So this full moon has many layers to it. It's very complex. It has intense energy, and then it has this more subdued hidden energy. So it's this interesting kind of tension that I find pretty fascinating, and I think we can use it as creatives. And just know that some of this might hold back the revelations or insights that we might get, might hold back a little bit until the end of the month. So creative souls, this is a time to be a quick change artist when necessary. It's about doing what you have to do to get your words out into the world. Because there are two separate aspects to a writing life. There's the being inventive and creative part of it, and there's also allowing your intuition to lead the way, to show you how to do it. So just be willing to be, just simply be in the world in new ways now. Even if it means changing your look to embrace your true nature. For example, dressing differently, walking differently, straightening your posture, speaking from a deeper place in your diaphragm, saying no more often, creating more boundaries to protect the sacredness of your creative ideas and your writing life, so that you can really allow the expansion of your inner brilliance to be seen. All right? Please leave me comments. I want to hear from you. Sending you mad writing mojo. Happy writing.